Hi everyone, I'm Max. I'm a developer at Redbox Digital. I'm at all the usual places online. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about JavaScript in Magento 2. I've been doing Magento 2 stuff pretty much full time for the last 10 months or so, and I do a lot of JavaScript. And I'm hoping maybe over the course of this talk, if you're doing this, can save you a bit of pain, a bit of heartache. I don't know. Out of interest, how many people here consider writing JavaScript part of their job? OK, keep your hand up if you enjoy that part of your job. Yeah, most people. That's good, right? I'm not going to teach you JavaScript here. Don't have that much time. But if you want to learn JavaScript, I recommend this book, Speaking JavaScript. It's available for free online, or you can buy it. And it's good for every skill level. Quality book. You don't need to know JavaScript to enjoy this talk, hopefully. Right, so. Yeah. So the theme of Magento 2's JavaScript evolution is it grew up big time. And they did three things. And I'm going to talk about two of them. The first one it did is they introduced this really fancy new app framework for talking to Magento's fancy new API framework. It uses Knockout.js, and it's really cool and really, really complicated. And is probably a week-long course on its own. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But I recommend checking it out if you like doing single-page app stuff and you like doing Magento stuff. So I'm going to talk about the other two things they did, which really revolve around increasing code quality and making our sites safer and faster, which hopefully are goals we can all get behind. And to kind of demonstrate how this all works, we're going to go on an adventure. Right? We're going to port some code from Magento 1 to Magento 2. And it's really, really dirt simple code. So if everyone here can imagine it being something a bit more exciting, doing something a bit more valuable, I would appreciate it. So here it is. This is it. We've got some JavaScript. We're waiting for the DOM to render with jQuery. And then we're selecting an element by the ID, and we're adding a class. And we don't know what the class name is. We have to get it from PHP. It's coming from the template somewhere, right? This code is really bad for two reasons, right? The first reason is inline JavaScript, right? These things. I hate these. I want to expunge all of these from the face of the earth, right? It really builds up inside me.
Nazi.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. And I know what you're all thinking, why, right? What doesn't deserve that? Yeah, it does. First of all, the bad thing is it mixes, our code and our knowledge, which unless you're a Lisp programmer is a bad thing, right? But the second reason is actually far more compelling to me, and that's security, right? I'm going to introduce to you the next generation of web security, okay? Content security policies. Anyone heard of this? Right, so it's designed, it's pretty new. It's designed to prevent cross-site scripting. Who's heard of that? Yeah, so cross-site scripting is the big boy in terms of website vulnerabilities. The idea is it's called XSS because CSS was taken. It's another reason I hate CSS. And it revolves around I can get my code into your site, and once it's there, the browser will render it and steal your credit card data and everything else. It's really bad, and it's surprisingly, unnervingly easy to get a little bit of HTML to render on a foreign website. Really, you wouldn't sleep at night if you did info security. Okay. This is a pretty good description of how it all happens. But back to content security policy, it's designed to break that. What it means is, effectively, it's an HTTP header that whitelists what can appear, where JavaScript or CSS or fonts can come from, right? So it says you're only allowed to run JavaScript if it's come from this trusted server, right? So my script here, if I get this into your site, when the browser downloads it, can't run. It just stops. You get an error in your console, says, don't trust this, nah, get out of here. This is really powerful, but going back to the original topic, what does this all have to do with inline scripts? Well, think about it. If I can get this onto your website, surely I can get this onto your website too. And the browser has no way of verifying the trustworthiness of this code, right? This, to a browser, looks exactly the same as the initial snippet we posted above. And so what content security policy says is if you want to implement me, if you want your website to be more secure, which you do, you've got to say goodbye to inline script tags and inline JavaScript in general, because it is simply not to be trusted. You can't lock that door. And in Magento 1, this is impossible, right? Because it also involves all the on-click attributes in HTML elements. And, well, yeah, it's a hot mess, Magento 1. Magento 2 gave us a better way. And looks like this, right? So this is what we would put in our template instead of our inline script tag. And I know it looks like an inline script tag. It says script right there. It's not, because that custom MIME type means that the browser doesn't render it as JavaScript. It's just some other element on the page that's got some content in it, which happens to be JSON, right? And this is a really powerful idiom created by Magento. And it gives us a lot of information, but this is all knowledge. There's no behavior in here. So it tells us, well, that's the special MIME type, in case you missed it. But it tells us what code to run. That's a link to a JavaScript file. It tells us which element to run that, to run that code on. And it tells us what data to pass along to the JavaScript code we run it. And that first reference is an external file, right? So I'll go through it again. Which code to run? This, we don't have the .js suffix on here. And we don't have the base URL at the beginning. But this is just a path to a JavaScript file in your project, OK? You can explain, well, you can see how it all works. This is a page in the Magento developer documentation that I encourage you to check out. And here's one about locating those components. If you have that JSON file, how do you get back? Because there's other stuff it does. You can map these. There's a layer of indirection. You can have a human readable name that points to a different file somewhere else. And this is a best practice. I didn't show it in there because it hides what's going on. It's just a mapping. But it means that, a different party can come and extend your work without having to override what you've done, right? Which JavaScript to run, on which elements. This is a CSS selector. It takes the JavaScript module that we've referenced there, and it will return a function, hopefully, and it will run it on every element matched by that selector. Now, since we're porting that original M1 code, hopefully this just matches one element. If this doesn't match one element, you're doing something wrong, right? And then we get another object of which data to pass along. And you can see we're setting this class name variable here. This is, well, yeah, that's the same as in the previous example, right? We've got no actual code that's set in the class name here. This is just all the information that we were encoding in there, right? Much safer. Content security policy has no issue with this. It's just text, man. Ta-da. Right. So there's more to this. You don't have to use JSON. You can set this in an HTML attribute on one element. There's other crap going on. You've got, yeah, it's a complicated thing they've got here. That's just the surface. And I hope I've kind of motivated why it exists, right? We're going to look at the, back to our thing. What we've basically got rid of is the script tags, right? But there's still a massive piece of this puzzle that we haven't answered yet, right? What about all the other code that we wrote? Well, I'm going to get to that. The next tentpole feature of Magento 2's JavaScript framework is the fact that things load asynchronously, right? I'm really excited about this. More excited than most people I work with. Most of my family members don't care too much either. But it's a big deal, right? I care. So it's time for a history lesson, right? In the olden days, Magento 1 you'd make a request, it would render some HTML document. Now, things haven't changed that much. Magento 2 still does that. But do you remember when you would add your JavaScript and it generates this list, right? You use this thing. Haven't seen this for a while. Use this thing to add all your JavaScript in there, and then it comes out in here. So what happens when the browser gets here, right? We're loading our HTML. We're getting on with it. We see a JavaScript tag. Whoa, oh no. Browser's not expecting that. So we've got to stop. We've got to download all the JavaScript. We've got to parse it, execute it, then we carry on, right? But it actually does this for every single JavaScript file in the whole page. And when you load a page and you see just a dumb blank white screen before the stuff renders, I'm sorry. When you see just this dumb blank white page before your content turns up, it's loading the JavaScript, right? And the browser's doing the right thing here, okay? Because document.write exists in JavaScript, you have to stop rendering the DOM until that JavaScript is done, right? But maybe not all of our JavaScript has to wait until the DOM is ready. Well, maybe not all of it has to pause the DOM rendering so our JavaScript can run. In fact, anything that you're wrapping in one of those DOM-ready event handlers, you're forcing that behavior. You're forcing it to wait until the DOM is rendered. So why pay the penalty up front of loading that JavaScript, of making your customer wait some amount of time, right? On Magento 2, your customer's already reaching for their credit card. On Magento 1, they're still looking at a white screen, right? And look, it's not just me who thinks this, okay? Google, company who know a thing or two about web performance, they say it too, right? Don't have render blocking JavaScript unless you really need to. And even then, try and get rid of it. So how do we get rid of render blocking JavaScript? What is the other way? Well, you can load scripts a bit more intelligently, right? It's quite a complicated topic. This article explains it fairly well, yeah? Calls it murky waters. It is pretty horrible. Magento 2, being the conservative technology giant that they are, went with a slightly more conservative approach. They used a library called RequireJS, right? It handles, downloading JavaScript, running it, working out what JavaScript it needs before it runs. It manages your dependencies, and it does it all dynamically on the fly. It's pretty cool, and it's pretty well established, right? 1.0 was released in 2011, right? This thing's older than my career. And it forces you to write your code in a custom format called AMD. That's not the chip manufacturer, it's a different AMD. It stands for asynchronous module definition, I think, right? It's pretty well documented here, and there's a specification for it too, if you really want to get deep in this. Now, here's what it looks like, right? We've got some JavaScript here, and we'll go through it. So this is the code we recognize, right? This is basically ripped off from our Magento 1 starting thing, right? The rest of it, that's all new. So what's going on, right? Define. Can everyone see the purple okay, by the way? I didn't check that ahead of time. Right, so define is a function given to us by RequireJS, and it says, hey, I'm making a module here, get ready, right? Then we give an array of our dependencies. I'm using jQuery because, well, everyone uses jQuery all the time, right? So I say I need that, and it will make sure it loads jQuery first, right? If you've ever had a script loading order bug in Magento 1, you know that the thing you do when you get one of those is you pray, because there's basically no way to fix it. You can rename your JavaScript AAA, right? Or yeah, no, you don't have that problem anymore. It all just works, right? So the rest of it, this function here, this is the function that RequireJS runs to get the value of your module. What that means is, essentially, before we get to that, the way we get our dependencies in there, this module function takes an argument, right? We call it $, because jQuery is the $, right? These things line up. And you can put other stuff in here, underscore, some jQuery plugin. I don't know what people use to write JavaScript these days. Knockout.js, apparently. And then we've got the body of the function. So what we're doing here, we're making a function this is the thing we return. This is the thing Magento will later on run on our element with the ID, element ID, to add the class, right? So we return that function, and yeah, the nature of this is it's got two arguments, element and config, and that's what makes it in Magento parlance a JavaScript component. It's a technical term in Magento for something you can pass in. Sorry, you got a question?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask, where does this go? Is this still inline in your PHP?
This is in a file.
Or is this in a
So, yeah, this is in a file now. We're not inline, right? This is the other piece. So the external JavaScript we were referring to in the JSON, that's this. The next slide or two make it a bit clearer, but yeah, no, good question. Yeah, this is now in a file, sorry. And yeah, you have one of these in a file. This is a module. It defines a module. It's like a class, right? You don't put more than one in a file. You just don't, right? So yeah, these two elements are important, right? So we've got L, yeah, and config, right? Going back to this one, we've got the element in purple and the config in green, yeah? And these things line up. Got them both on one slide now. So yeah, this js/set class name, that's the file that this code lives in. And that's how it finds it. So, and how does it find it? How does it know to load this? Well, yeah, that's kind of the next question. Who started this? Who took us from our JSON to our, well, element with a new class name now? Well, as always, Magento started it, right? They've got this code, which you can look at. You can see, maybe you can't see, it's pretty small. There's a selector there, script, open bracket, type equals text/x Magento init, close bracket. That selector is the thing it uses to find all the things that have the JSON in. It parses that JSON, finds those scripts, loads them. When it's loaded the script, it runs it on all the elements matched in that CSS selector. That's the engine room of this whole thing. I'm not going to explain it more because, well, there's beer and food, and you know. But if you notice, you look back at this, you see they've got a define thing here. They're using an AMD module too, right? Well, who loads them, right? Who watches the watchman, as it were? Well, RequireJS does that, right? You've got ways of specifying an entry point, you know, an uncaused cause in this beautiful universe of JavaScript, right? Patient 0 of the modules, you say, this is my main module. Load this, it has dependencies, it will load other stuff, it does its thing. And that's the architecture of Magento request from a JavaScript point of view. Eventually it gets to that file that was in the previous slide. That goes through your whole code, gets all those JSON templates out, and generates the script. And that's how you get your dynamism, right? Faster and safer. Now, what some people say to me is when they learn a bit about how RequireJS works, they say, well, when the page is rendered, I see my stuff. Are you then going to load 150 JavaScript files? Well, yeah, actually. Yeah, that's exactly what it does. I've seen upwards of 600 requests on a page. Turns out it doesn't matter, right? Magento 1 had this feature. I call it a feature called script combining. To me, it always seemed like a flip of a coin, whether it would do what it was supposed to do or totally bust your site, right? And it's not actually...
That's why people started putting their colon...
Yeah, because someone forgets a semicolon somewhere because they're writing hipster JavaScript, and your whole house of cards comes tumbling down, right? Because, yeah, it just proves to you what a website is, right? It's a big mess, right? But you don't need that feature here. And you don't need it in Magento 1 either, but you even more don't need it here. Because first of all, they're not disrupting, this performance holdup is after the page is rendered, right? In this second or two, after you see the content and before your JavaScript loads, your customer's not, clicking the add to cart button furiously. Selenium might be doing that, but your customer isn't, I promise. They're getting their bearings, right? They're looking at they're reading the description, making sure they're in the right place. All right? And this doesn't actually take that long because we have now HTTP 2. And HTTP2 is designed for exactly this kind of thing, right? You don't have that whole kind of build up around an HTTP request anymore. It's all just, you know, it opens up a pipe, sends the headers once, and just pushes everything down. This will happen just like you combine everything into one file and be really fast, especially if you've got something like Varnish running your full-page cache, which in Magento 2 you should. So I implore you all to think about security in your sites because we're in e-commerce and it's a secure business. I implore you all to think about performance because every second you gain on your page load gives you a 7% conversion boost. And I implore you all to think about this stuff because it's cool technology. And if you're a technologist, this should be compelling in its own right.